Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. Time for yet another show. As it turns out, these things happen daily, and so we're ready to... let's say we're ready to start one off here today. Let's see. Plenty, of course, to go over today. It's Tuesday. Joan McCarter should be joining us in the last hour of the program. Hang on. You'll have to make it all the way through the first hour first in order to get there. But lots to cover, lots to catch up on, lots of things happening, some of it believable, some not. We should note at the outset, as I am reminded by many people on Twitter and elsewhere this morning, this is the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd's death. And so a solemn occasion on that account. And I'm sure to be marked by continued protest and demonstration around the country. But that is, it's to be expected, I suppose. And I suppose we've made some progress in that particular case anyway, even if not necessarily general progress, just in terms of holding responsible people accountable. That is at least some progress and some good news. In many other cases, of course, there's no such progress, and that's essentially the problem, and that's why we're marking the date today. There are many other things going on today, of course, and many other anniversaries. Some will, let's say, considerably lighter in how they can be considered. For instance, as Bill reminds us in his morning tweet, is apparently also the 44th anniversary of the release of Star Wars. So that's pretty incredible as well. Many of you big fans, I am sure. And I don't know how you'll be marking that occasion. Probably not with nationwide protest, though. We can probably guess that much. All right. Well, that was mixed news, to say the very least. Lots of other things going on today. I suppose there will be people who protest the idea of giving Marjorie Taylor Greene any more oxygen than zero, I guess, as she continues on her crusade to become just the most disgusting person in Congress, if not anywhere on earth at this point, doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on her Holocaust analogies, as usual. I don't know what to say about a person like this. I mean, there's just some people that are just too dumb to understand that they're dumb and they don't get it. And there's just never going to be any convincing them. But she continues to insist that asking people to get vaccines or wear masks, or insisting that they do in some instances, is pretty much the same thing, or possibly worse, than the Holocaust. And nobody seems to be able to convince her that that's just an inept comparison and unwise to continue to say out loud. So there you go. And Republicans aren't likely to get it together at any point to censure or expel her. So for now, I guess we all have to stand around and listen to her insist that this is reality. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, obviously. And she'll never get the fact that distinguishing marks or distinguishing features or badges of one kind or another are not all the same simply because they're distinguishing marks and badges. There are differences between things. That's just kind of the way it is in the world, and she insists that it's not. I don't know. There you go. So I think her latest thing is, right, so vaccine passports would be like the yellow stars as opposed to, I don't know, driver's license or a member of Congress's pin that allows them on the floor. It infers or it imbues the bearer with privileges, not punishment, but whatever, yada yada. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, we're having to yada yada the Holocaust because of this woman. So that's where we are. All right. I mean, there's nothing you can do until it's time to be rid of her, I guess, at that point. All right. What other things have we to share with you today? Well, let's visit Pocket rather than Twitter, I think, just for now, to get off of that. There's news that, and this might be something that perhaps Joan might want to discuss a little bit, but we'll update you on the news. Don McGahn, you remember that guy. He was previously White House counsel to Dotard J. Trump, and he apparently, according to this report here in the New York Times by Charlie Savage, and you got to trust Charlie Savage, reported yesterday he's now ready to testify before Congress. So we'll see what that's worth. President Trump's former White House counsel, Donald F. McGahn II, I always love the initial F, has agreed to testify behind closed doors before the House Judiciary Committee sometime next week about Mr. Trump's efforts to obstruct the Russia investigation, according to two people familiar with the matter. Lawyers for House Democrats, the Justice Department, and Mr. McGahn had tentatively struck a deal to provide the testimony earlier in May, but the scheduling was delayed for weeks while they waited to see what Trump, who was not a party to the agreement, would do. And the answer is he played golf and ate cake. And so now I guess they get to go ahead with the testimony. Mr. McGahn's agreement to testify with President Biden's permission, because it's the president who holds the executive privilege here, was contingent upon there being no active legal challenge to his participation in the matter, according to two people who spoke on condition of anonymity. Why? Because that's what they do. We all know why they do these things. It's always noted for the record in the articles, though. Immediately after the deal was announced this month in a court filing, a lawyer for Mr. Trump had conveyed that the former president intended to intervene. Former presidents can invoke executive privilege, although courts weigh that against the view of the incumbent president, and Mr. Trump could have sought a court order blocking Mr. McGahn's testimony. But late last week, the people said the lawyer for Mr. Trump, Patrick Philbin, a former deputy White House counsel in the Trump administration who is continuing to help handle his post-presidential legal affairs, said that Mr. Trump would not be intervening after all. He needs both hands for the cake. Mr. Philbin, who did not respond to a request for comment, is said to have provided no reason for the about face. No reason. Okay. Whatever. While he was president, Trump vowed to stonewall, quote, all, I don't know why that has to be in quotes, but stonewall, quote, all congressional subpoenas, and taxpayer-funded lawyers with the Justice Department fought lengthy court battles and appeals that succeeded in running out the clock on the possibility that House Democrats would obtain the information they were seeking before the 2020 election. Now that Trump is no longer president, however, there is at least one major difference. To keep litigating over the matter, Mr. Trump would have to pay the legal costs himself. Aha. So, therefore, no action. The McGahn case stems from the House Judiciary Committee's desire in 2019 to question him about matters related to his role as a key witness in the report by the special counsel, Robert Mueller, about efforts by Trump to impede the Russia investigation. But after the panel subpoenaed McGahn to testify, he refused to appear on Trump's instructions. The committee sued, and the case went through several rounds of legal fights over various constitutional issues that lacked definitive precedents because previous such disputes had generally been resolved with a negotiated compromise. Currently, the case is pending before the Court of Appeals for the full District of Columbia Circuit. That is to say, en banc, right? Yes, on the question of whether Congress has a, quote, cause of action that permits it to sue the executive branch. We're all still trying to figure this out. Under presidents of both parties, the executive branch had argued that Congress does not actually have a cause of action to sue the executive branch, and the Biden Justice Department has signaled that it was prepared to keep arguing that position if no accommodation could be reached. Isn't that fun? The deal averts the uncertain outcome of further such litigation, but also means that the next time a fight emerges over a subpoena from the House to the executive branch, the Justice Department will be able to start fresh in prolonged litigation over that unresolved issue. Under the deal, according to a court filing, there will be strict limits on the testimony Mr. McGahn will provide. He will testify behind closed doors for a transcribed interview rather than in public. Only lawmakers on the House Judiciary Committee may attend, and they may ask Mr. McGahn only about information attributed to him or events involving him, and in the publicly available portions of the Mueller report. The deal also says that the parties will get up to 7 days to review the transcript for accuracy before it is made public, suggesting that it would be disclosed sometime in the second week of June. So that's it. That's the quick and abrupt end of the article. So basically, nothing has happened yet. The testimony comes next week. You won't find out about what's in it until June, although perhaps there'll be some leaks and some reports about those leaks. And I don't know. I would imagine probably it'll end up being not all that exciting and not all that revealing, but I'm sure there will be some spectacular headlines nonetheless, and we'll read all about it. And the plain fact is that there's still no guarantee of any constitutional power to subpoena the executive branch by the legislative branch. And we're right back where we started from. Just thought I would, update you on that merry-go-round and exactly where we appear to be on that. All right. I think that's important to note at the very least. Let's see. More reports of things like this emerging. I feel like this is the second or third such story we've heard, but I don't know if we've read them all on the air, but I will borrow from Laura Clausen's coverage of the issue on the front page of Daily Kos, this time involving the Commerce Department. A secretive and abusive unit in the Commerce Department tracked social media posts critical of Trump's census. It feels like a lot of this coming to light after the exit from the Trump administration. Let's just check in on this one. The Biden administration has put the brakes on, thankfully, a shady, abusive security unit inside the Commerce Department under the leadership of a career supervisor named George Lee, the Investigations and Threat Management Service. They have a whole acronym and everything, ITMS. Well, I guess that's just an abbreviation, really, or does it count as an acronym if it's not like pronounceable as a word? I'm not sure. Anyway, the ITMS has morphed under George Lee into something more akin to a counterintelligence operation that collected information on hundreds of people inside and outside the department, according to the Washington Post. That transformation started before Donald Trump's time in the White House. But it was all too well suited for the Trump era. The ITMS monitored social media, flagging critical comments about the census by random people in the U.S., like one by a retiree in Florida who dared to write that the census might be manipulated, quote, to benefit the Trump party. People who wrote such social media posts were searched on secure intelligence databases because apparently it was suspicious to correctly observe that the Trump administration was trying to mess with the census at a time when the Trump administration was broadcasting that it was trying to mess with the census. The ITMS also searched Commerce Department servers for specific Chinese words, leading to surveillance of Asian American employees because someone decided that using Chinese words was suspicious. The unit covertly searched workers' belongings, in some cases obscuring the view of security cameras and using lock-picking tools. That does sound pretty shady. 3 different agents formally filed complaints with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and according to a Trump political appointee in the Commerce Department, the ITMS, quote, has been allowed to operate far outside the bounds of federal law enforcement norms and has created an environment of paranoia and retaliation at the department. What a great thing to have at the Commerce Department. Okay, the Post's investigation didn't conclusively reveal when the most abusive behaviors started, and Lee is a career staffer, not a political appointee. But it's worth noting that those abuses were very much in line with other things we saw from the Trump administration, like trying to politicize the civil service to require loyalty to Trump, the kind of thing that stalking social media critics of census policy would fit right in with, or pressuring federal public health officials to follow Trump's preferred messaging on the coronavirus pandemic, or using the Justice Department as the personal law firm for Trump and his inner circle, or social media monitoring by the U.S. Postal Service. That's what I'm reminded of most recently by this story. Abusive behaviors tend to grow more abusive in a context that encourages them. Good point, Laura. As of October 23rd, the ITMS had 1,183 open cases, many of them taking place before 2018 because Lee refused to close cases that should have been closed. I wonder what's up with this guy. On May 13th, the Biden administration ordered the suspension of all the unit's activities. On May 15th, a Commerce Department spokesman said Lee was, quote, not currently supervising the work or the employees of ITMS and is not performing any investigatory duties. Sounds like he's on internal suspension here. That should be the prelude to a deep investigation, which can build on an Inspector General's investigation of the unit that found that it had no legal authority for much of its work, and a search through the federal government for other such unaccountable, unlawful, abusive units. It is a cliche, she concludes, a cliche to say that sunlight is the best disinfectant, but sometimes it's true. Yes, just not artificial light or light bulbs inserted into the body at various points, wherever they may be. That can't actually help you with coronavirus or anything else. Just want to clear that up before someone decides to run away with that one. Okay. Let's see. Next things, I don't know. I'm distracted by the other posts being shared over at Daily Kos, probably equally deserving of attention. But moving back to what's in pocket to catch up with some of our other stories. Let's see. How about how long is this thing? Because there's an update of sorts on the Matt Gaetz case, which at this point I'm kind of getting tired of it. As much fun as it is to twist the knife on Matt Gaetz, I'm just at this point sort of waiting for, all right, well, let's just get an indictment already. But this is of some interest here. There was this, there's another party to all of this, or rather an injured party in all of this, mostly due to the activity of Gates's friend and co-conspirator, Joel Greenberg here. That there was an episode in the whole story. I don't know if we got to mention it or not, but at some point, Joel Greenberg found himself in a dispute with a person, I guess possibly interested in running for the same elective position. And so he decided that he had to destroy this person's life and career in order to ensure that he would be able to remain in office, where he could steal state resources to mine for Bitcoin and make fake IDs for the underage women that he wanted to have sex with and traffic to others. All the important functions of government. You can see why he wanted to remain in office. Well, anyway, here's the story of this particular person, this time reported in Rolling Stone by Tessa Stewart, who interviews this person under the headline, Teacher Framed by Joel Greenberg in Scheme That Triggered Matt Gaetz Investigation Speaks. Yeah, so apparently this targeting of this person who was a teacher interested in running for political office resulted in the kind of targeting that ended up drawing the attention of police. And as the police dug into what Greenberg was up to, they stumbled into the activities with Matt Gaetz as well. And you'll never guess how Greenberg attempted to frame and smear this teacher so that he could eliminate him from politics. It was through projection. Yes, he said, oh, well, who would be particularly damaging to most people, but a teacher in particular, would be if we were to accuse him of inappropriate sexual relationships with underage girls. And, we can do that credibly and believably because we ourselves are involved in inappropriate relationships with underage girls. So we have lots of material to draw on. And it never occurred to him that anybody would say, wait, that's weirdly specific. We should investigate this guy. And, well, I guess that's what happened. Greenberg's lies about Brian Butte, I'm guessing, is something close to the pronunciation of his name. It's actually like Beutler, except without the L-E-R at the end. It's Brian, B-E-U-T-E. So Brian Butte, Brian Boyd, I have no idea. I'm sorry to say. And you can't tell just from this written material, but we'll continue on anyway. That's the subheader here that says Greenberg's lies about Brian Boyd, maybe, kicked off an investigation that unraveled a host of other crimes, and it may just be the beginning. I don't think this story is done, says Butte. We'll say Butte for our purposes. Anyway, Brian Butte had been a teacher for almost 2.5 decades when he got the idea in his head to run for local office. Why would you want to serve your fellow man? Don't do it, sir. Anyway, a week after Butte filed his paperwork to run for tax collector of Seminole County, Florida, and I do question sometimes how people get the idea in their head that they want to do that, the school where he'd worked for 17 years received an anonymous letter falsely accusing him of an improper relationship with a student. Soon, sock puppet accounts appeared online parroting the same lie. Butte went on administrative leave, and 2 weeks later, an investigation by the Seminole County Sheriff's Department cleared his name. Thankfully, that only took 2 weeks. That's pretty good. Butte went back to work and kept campaigning. It would take almost 8 months before local police and later federal investigators would unravel the scheme and ultimately arrest the man responsible for spreading those lies. And lo and behold, it was the current tax collector of Seminole County, Joel Greenberg. Amazing. In addition to attempting to smear Butte as a pervert and a racist, for no particular reason, just he was familiar with those two problems, Greenberg was later accused of a host of other crimes, 33 in total. He didn't even get a chance to accuse other people of more than half of those crimes, including using driver's licenses confiscated by his office, embezzling and diverting nearly $500,000 taxpayer dollars to purchase cryptocurrency and sports memorabilia, and defrauding a COVID relief program, like a greatest hits of idiotic crime. It was many months before Butte realized the investigation that started with Greenberg's false accusations against him would ultimately threaten to take down a sitting congressman and one of former President Trump's closest allies on Capitol Hill, Representative Matt Gaetz. On Monday, Joel Greenberg pled guilty to 6 charges. I guess that would have been last week, or perhaps the week before. This is datelined May 21st. So not yesterday that he pled, but last week. I've lost my spot here. But he pled guilty to 6 charges, Greenberg did, including sex trafficking of a minor. That's one to keep. Aggravated identity theft. I didn't even know you could aggravate that. Wire fraud, stalking, and conspiracy. Greenberg, who faces a mandatory minimum sentence of 12 years, has signaled through his lawyer that he's now cooperating with government prosecutors to bring charges against Gaetz, who is now reportedly under investigation for his relationship with the same 17-year-old that Greenberg pled guilty to sex trafficking. I wonder who he sex trafficked her to. Gaetz maintains his innocence, whatever. Maybe he is, who knows. But hey, doesn't look good. Butte spoke about the ordeal for the first time at a press conference on Monday. Again, that would be last Monday, I believe, during which he thanked his wife and 2 daughters, 3 incredibly strong women, he said, who also endured the trauma of these dreadfully false accusations. They never once doubted my innocence and integrity, and they too are relieved that today is the beginning of our family's freedom. Okay. Later, Butte talked with Rolling Stone about being unwittingly thrust into the white-hot center of a national scandal. Must have been exciting. And so here's the first question put to him. Joel Greenberg entered a guilty plea this week. How did that feel for you? Probably pretty good, but he says the jury trial was actually supposed to start in January and was postponed several times, and then the judge set May 15th as a deadline for the plea deal. Once it was announced there was going to be a plea deal, that told me a lot. Psychologically, that was the beginning of a feeling of a little more at ease and feeling that there was going to be some kind of justice. But I'll say this, I don't think the story is done. Probably not. But yeah, that must have felt terrible, right? If you were thinking that the trial was finally going to happen, it was going to start in January, and it just didn't, and then didn't again, and didn't again. You probably had some doubts about whether you're going to get your justice. I don't think this story is done. Follow up. What do you mean by that? I don't just mean nationally. I have a hard time believing that you can get away with this kind of injustice, this many crimes, even though 27 charges against Greenberg were thrown out. I don't think you reach that point without either assistance or people looking the other way or favors. That doesn't just happen by accident. I want to see all criminals uprooted locally because Seminole County citizens don't have restitution and they don't have resolve. I don't know what that's supposed to mean exactly, but therefore I don't have restitution or resolve. We need a conclusion. Okay, well, closure I get, but resolve, I don't understand why you would say that they haven't seen a resolution to the problem. Is that what you're trying to say? All right. Well, running up against our break time here, we'll do one more Q&A and then exit and see whether we want to continue on the other side here. You've called for an investigation at the state level as well, right? And he says, I expect a full-scale investigation at the state level to identify individuals either complicit or derelict of duty. Or maybe the process itself allowed this to happen. I have a hard time believing it, but maybe it did. I think he's gunning for the possibility here, and I think we've heard this suggested before, that maybe Ron DeSantis aided and abetted in having people look the other way when those guys were in power.
Hi everyone, it's me, Gil. Minimal contributor to content, but regular contributor to funding for Kagro in the morning. Let's change things up from David's so very tired plea for your contributions with a plea of my own. If you want to add your voice to the show, do it. Record your own segment using your favorite recording device and send it to David. Read an article and give your opinion. Write your own essay and read that. The sky's the limit. Well, not really. Try to keep it relatively short so David doesn't have to stress about cutting it and hurting your feelings. Join the hallowed ranks of Greg Dworkin and Joan McCarter and be part of this somewhat witty deep dive into political topics with unnecessary censoring. Lend your voice to the show by sending it to kagrox@gmail.com. KAGROX@gmail.com.
Alright, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue on with this Rolling Stone interview with Brian Butte, we're saying. The teacher falsely accused and in a frame-up job by Joel Greenberg, Matt Gaetz's pal, who now has pled guilty to several charges, including sex trafficking that minor girl. And, well, you heard the earlier background on this thing, that this poor guy, a teacher, had the temerity to decide to run for Seminole County tax collector against Greenberg, and so Greenberg thought the best way to handle that challenge was to anonymously and falsely tell everyone in the county that he was having inappropriate sexual relationships with students. And, well, he wasn't, but it was pretty much the Joel Greenberg life story instead. And I guess police got interested in that, and now they've been investigating. So where were we in all this? He was saying that he thinks that there's no way Greenberg could have gotten away, even for the short time that he did get away, with this incredible web of criminal activity. And I mean, it really is kind of a stunning array of criminal activity. How could this be going on without somebody looking out for him or telling the authorities to look the other way on this stuff? It's a good question. So he's answering the question of, you've called for an investigation at the state level, right? And he again says, look, I think there should be such an investigation. You can't really have gotten away with all of this stuff, even for the short time that he did, relatively short time, without some help. I want to see a commission, he says, a committee or something. Good luck with that, since we're not getting one for the insurrection. But, who knows, maybe. We need to see a resolution so that we can move forward and trust our state government is operating with people of morals and people who weren't complicit in what we now know to be a lot of crimes. I would like to see a full-scale investigation of why this crime was ever committed, and more importantly, why did it continue? Why was there not a mediation process for the citizens of Seminole County? Why? Why indeed? Why? Also, what? What are you talking about? A mediation process for the citizens. Okay, well, I mean, I too think that there should be an investigation, but I don't know exactly what he's getting at here. But, it might still be a dangerous situation for him to be speaking out in Florida. Joel Greenberg, the next question begins, was arrested in June in the middle of the primary campaign you were running against him, but his name stayed on the ballot. And that's true. I mean, it's posed as a question here, but it's just a factual assertion. He responds by saying he resigned from office and then he removed himself from consideration. Then my primary became a two-way race, or so I thought. I guess there was one other person running to unseat Greenberg in the primary. And I guess that's to be expected once, I guess, word gets around, not necessarily among the general public, but among insiders, that this guy is, stealing Bitcoin and embezzling money and trafficking underage girls and whatever else he's up to. Probably people say, I bet I could beat him. But beware, it's not always all that easy. So he resigns and removes himself from consideration, and that should have made the primary a two-way race. But then he goes and says, or so I thought, Joel Greenberg received 11.5% of the vote, even after all of this. So, that's kind of interesting. Wow, is the response here. 11.5% of people still voted for him after he'd been arrested for stalking you and resigning from office. Yes. And that's all there is to say about that particular issue, but there are more issues to be discussed here. When you filed to run for county tax collector, could you ever imagine that this would be the outcome? That's curious. I wonder if did he run because he had heard that such things were, the case? Or did he run because he said, I don't believe taxes are being collected properly here in Seminole County? I'd like to know that. But anyway, back when you filed to run for county tax collector, could you ever imagine that this would be the outcome? He says, I was fully prepared to run a three-way race. I was serious about removing him constitutionally through an election. I just wanted to beat him. I was hoping I was giving the citizen Republicans, at least, that option. I guess several people thought that I never had a chance, but interestingly enough, the crime still happened. Maybe I did have a chance. Okay. I guess that's one way of looking at it. Why did you decide, there we go, to run for tax collector in the first place? I was involved with a community organization. There's politics, I guess you'd say, involved with that, and I started to realize that my skills and my interests seemed to line up with the possibility of serving the citizens as a public representative. Not a great answer. I looked at all kinds of different seats, and I didn't think anything really was a good fit or I'd even have a chance. I had a few friends who said, why don't you look at the tax collector situation? I knew there were some ridiculous things going on for 3 years. I took a couple of weeks to really dig in. I saw an article in the Orlando Sentinel entitled something like, Joel Greenberg gives $3.5 million to friends and family, something like that. When I saw that, I decided, I've had enough. I'm going to run for this. A couple days later, I was interviewed and I was asked, why are you doing this? Just like you're asking, and I'll say the same thing, because it's true. I felt that he lacked the character that was necessary to serve the citizens of our county. Okay, it's an okay answer. I would like to know, I guess the answer is in there. He's walking around saying, I should be in elective office. I just don't know which one. I'm not really qualified to run for any of the high elective offices, and all of the attainable elective offices, I don't even know what they do really exactly, and I guess I'd be qualified for them. But is there one that I could win? Because it seems like, and sometimes in these local elections, people just sit incumbent in these jobs forever, comfortably, and just continue on, even if they don't have any particular mission in mind and serving in these positions. They just like politics, and they like going to local Republican dinners and fundraisers. I can't imagine why anybody would like that, but they do. And going there as an elected official, people make a slightly bigger deal out of you. So I guess people just stick to these jobs. So basically he says, I want one of these. Which one? I don't know. Who cares? One of them. Which one might fit? This one, I guess I could be a tax collector. Look at this guy's corrupt. We should get rid of that guy. And good enough reason to get rid of the guy. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of a weird way of arriving at the idea. But it's very common. It was about a week after you gave that interview, the Rolling Stone interviewer here asks, that the school where you work received a letter that touched off this whole series of events, culminating in Greenberg's guilty plea this week. What will you do now? All right. I mean, it's a weird lead into what will you do now, but there you go. Well, I'm thankful that I work for a great institution, which found itself in the crosshairs too, that finds that I'm an upstanding individual. So I'll be teaching again. It'll be my 25th year in the profession. But I still have some goals to communicate through the next couple of months. I don't know which came first. Did Americans become disengaged because of criminal opportunists who hijacked the parties? Parties, that's interesting. I mean, take some responsibility. You're a Republican, and I know you'd love to be able to convince people that not all Republicans are like this, because you're not. But, I mean, and there's problems, obviously, in both parties, but there's only one, really, that's been dealing with this particular problem, and it's yours. And I'm sure you'll purge that problem in your little section of the Seminole County Republican Party, but come on, guy. Anyway, hijack the parties. Or did these opportunists arise because they saw a disengagement? I don't know which came first. I'm not a sociologist or a political historian. My message is, ultimately, since I can't change the political apparatus, let's change it collectively. Let's get involved. There are 210 million Americans that are officially adults over the age of 18. Even if 1% of those Americans got involved, only 1%. Going to meetings, he's right about this, going to meetings, supporting a candidate, becoming a candidate. You'd have roughly 40,000 newly engaged citizens in every single state on average. States to vary in size, I'll say that. Anyway, in Florida, our number would be much higher. There's more of us than these political opportunists. That's how a culture can be restored. We've got to stop asking our legislators to do it for us. All right. I mean, it's high-minded. It's very nice. Do you see yourself running for office again? I guess he didn't win. After all of that, right? He got stalked by the guy, sent the guy to jail, implicated Matt Gaetz, but the other guy, I guess, won the primary. Not the one that got 11.5%. Wow. Okay. I don't know, he says. All I know is this. I took it on the chin pretty hard, and my school took it on the chin pretty hard, and my family took it on the chin. My friends, I guess, also took it on the chin. It's about chins here, you can see. Here's what I'd rather see. I'd rather see my message be adopted by 2.1 million Americans. Okay. If I had a request, if I could manufacture my legacy, which I cannot, although Greenberg can try to do it, but if I could, that's what I'd like to see my legacy be. Here's a guy, a regular guy, just a teacher who ran for public office. His right to run for public office was disrupted. His family's liberty was disrupted. His entire life was disrupted, but he didn't quit. I mean, I guess he's not running again, right? So he gave it a valiant effort, and there's more of us. If there's more of us, the criminals disappear. It's a nice thought. So I can't do it on my own. I could never, if I ran again, I could never do it on my own. That's true. Okay. And that's the end of the interview. So whatever, man. It was interesting to hear from him. Not entirely convincing in terms of rah rah, let's all go out there and run for public office, or rah rah, this is the guy we want in public office. But it's very interesting to know and to hear from a person who just is on the receiving end of one of these stupid plots by Republicans to do for what? Seminole County tax collector. It's really quite amazing. All right, let's see. A couple other things I definitely have been interested in sharing with you that I think are strange and or worthy of some additional time. I didn't read yesterday the Washington Post piece, and it looks rather lengthy, but maybe we can give it a shot here, on the Maricopa County fraud that gave us some interesting insight and detail. In proportion to its size, I don't know how rich in additional and worthy detail it really is, but it was an interestingly composed piece and presented here in the Washington Post with a publication date of May 21st, written by Dan Zak, Z-A-K, as an essay, The Mess in Maricopa. Votes are still being counted in Arizona. They're really not. That's not what's happening. So you kind of missed it right from the subheader here. But it won't change the winner, but it might change America. And that actually is the more important portion of the whole thing, about how this will metastasize, and has metastasized already, into Georgia and likely into other places too. The dateline, of course, here, Phoenix. Something spooky has been happening here in Maricopa County. Weird spooky, crazy spooky. This has never happened before in America. Spooky. All true. We're in uncharted waters, says Tammy Patrick, a former Maricopa elections official. It's a clown car farce, said Terry Goddard, a former Democratic Attorney General of Arizona. It's unacceptable, says Grant Woods, former Republican Attorney General, who has since become a Democrat. I think it should stop. All you have left now is the crazies leading the crazies, says Democratic State Senator Rebecca Rios. It's mind-boggling and frightening that it's gone this far. Jack Sellers, the Republican chairman of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, called an emergency meeting Monday to deal with the situation, which he described as a grift disguised as an audit. That's a pretty good description of things, actually. But this, too, would have been last Monday. What is going on in Maricopa County? Well, for the past month, in a basketball arena in Phoenix, Arizonans, mostly, I guess, have been tallying ballots from the 2020 presidential election. Not really. They're just passing them around to one another and shining lights on them. But they like to think they're tallying ballots in some way, even though the ballots have already been officially counted and verified via a hand count of statistically representative subset for an election that was conducted fairly, checked repeatedly, adjudicated nationwide, certified over and over again for nearly 7 months now. But let's do more. Every time, the checks have confirmed that Joseph R. Biden beat Donald J. Trump for the presidency. Every time, Trump diehards have doubted the outcome, and I guess they always will. And so, last month, the Republican-led Arizona Senate took custody of nearly all 2.1 million ballots from Maricopa County, or all of the nearly 2.1 ballots. I was going to say, what did they do with the rest of them? But I guess they did. They got them all and gave those ballots, and this is the weirdest part of this whole thing. We've said this a number of times. Gave those ballots to a private company called Cyber Ninjas, a Florida cybersecurity firm, if they are even that, quite honestly, that has never conducted an election audit and whose CEO has been associated with several social media claims that the election was fraudulent, and with pro-Trump lawyers who filed election lawsuits last year. In my 28 years of doing elections, I have never seen a private takeover of any kind of public process related to an election, said Kim Wyman, Washington State's Republican Secretary of State. It's the wild, wild west. All right, Section 1. It has become so bizarre. From afar, the process in Arizona Veterans Memorial Coliseum appears low-key and methodical. The audit is boxes and paperwork and rotating trays that carry ballots past dizzied citizens. The closer you look and the more you listen, the stranger the situation gets. Over the past month, workers used ultraviolet light to check ballots for watermarks that don't exist. Cyber ninjas anticipated an attack by left-wing militants that has not occurred. Doors have been propped or left open in this large, porous public venue, as Arizona's elections director described the Coliseum. Pigeons have gotten inside, adding to concerns that ballots may be suspiciously marked. I don't know what the pigeons really have to do with anything. Are they going to crap on them? That's suspicious. A former state representative who was on the ballot, by the way, and was photographed at a Trump rally in D.C. on the day of the insurrection, was counting votes for a while. What was that about? Well, he won't say. Can't talk, signed an NDA, wrote former Representative Anthony Kern in an email. A non-disclosure agreement is yet another unheard of component of this so-called audit, it's in scare quotes here, which its critics refuse to mention without scare quotes. It's amateur hour, says Jeff Flake. Remember him? Republican, former U.S. Senator from Arizona. It's horrible for democracy, he says. The ballots themselves can no longer be trusted, says Ryan Macias, an election technology expert who has observed the process from the floor of the Coliseum. Rod Thompson, spokesman for Cyber Ninjas, questions the credibility of critics who have been against a full audit from the beginning. Cyber Ninjas has continued to follow its contract with the Arizona Senate to conduct the most comprehensive election audit in history, just with no rules. Thompson wrote in an email to the Washington Post, Cyber Ninjas has a proven track record in cybersecurity, which is not this, and information technology services, also not this, and will continue to maintain a high standard of professionalism in completing this engagement as they do all of their engagements. Skeptical experts are not the only ones watching this engagement. #Patriots are cobbling together a legend around Maricopa that fits into the cuckoo mythology of Trumpism. Day and night, all around America, armchair conspiracy theorists have scrutinized live video feeds of the process from 9 different angles, broadcast by One America News, the pro-Trump channel that has been given favored access to the process, and people involved. Followers of QAnon, you know what they are, and they're described here as a sprawling set of false claims that have coalesced into a radicalized movement that the FBI has designated a domestic terrorism threat, believed that a carnival next door, there's a carnival going on next door to the Coliseum. They believe that's a, you guessed it, false flag operation to disrupt the so-called audit. The first domino to fall is how those people are referring to Arizona, and the phrase is being echoed by channels like OAN and stoked by state legislators who supported the Stop the Steal movement. Mike Lindell, the pro-Trump pillow magnate, referred to Arizona as ground zero at the Conservative Political Action Conference earlier this year. On April 14th, Ron Watkins, the website administrator who some suspect is responsible for QAnon, posted that, quote, the world is watching Maricopa. Watch Arizona, Trump told Mar-a-Lago guests 2 weeks later, remember when he crashed that wedding, adding, I wouldn't be surprised if they found thousands and thousands and thousands of votes. 3,000 of votes. The obsessives have read sinister meaning into the fact that one of the Maricopa County supervisors happens to be named Bill Gates. You remember that. Of course, that sent their heads exploding. And that Dominion Voting Systems, whose equipment is used in Arizona elections, runs Microsoft software. Dun, dun, dun. We have the music for that, but screw it. It doesn't even rise to that level. It has become so bizarre, says Gates, a Republican member of the board, which helps run elections. The 5 supervisors, 4 of whom are Republican, have been painted as traitors for conducting and defending a legitimate election. In February, the state Senate fell 1 vote short of holding the supervisors in contempt, which might have resulted in their arrests. Inherent contempt being used by the Arizona State Senate, of all people. Okay. Outside the Coliseum, a vigil of Trump supporters erected a huge sign that says, "Board of Supervisors is the enemy of the nation." Wow. Between the obscure tedium inside the Coliseum and the carnival lunacy outside, including an actual carnival, I guess, it's possible to miss what's really going on in Maricopa. Not an insurrection, but a kind of nonviolent adminsurrection. Interesting terminology here. A haphazard, unprecedented corruption of both the democratic process and public trust, according to a bipartisan array of officials in Arizona and around the country who are worried that it will spread to other states. Says Supervisor Bill Gates, "We've gone into the rabbit hole." Section 2, "You ain't seen nothing yet." To understand why the rabbit hole opened here and why it's gotten so deep, it helps to understand the terrain. Maricopa County is bigger than New Jersey and more populous than Oregon. Since Arizona achieved statehood in 1912, only a single presidential candidate has won Arizona without carrying Maricopa. Starting in 1952, the county swung Republican in every presidential election until 2020, when Joe Biden won a slim majority of votes in Maricopa and beat Trump statewide by just 0.3 percentage points, locking down 11 electoral points, as they put it, that were crucial in offsetting losses in swing states such as North Carolina. Arizona is a prize, and you get it by winning Maricopa. Political scientists had been expecting a blue Arizona at some point, given Maricopa's 17.5% growth in population since 2010 and an increasingly younger, politically active, and ethnically diverse voter base, buoyed by Hispanic immigrants and an influx of Californians who are fleeing regulation and taxes and paying for haciendas in cash. Though those sound like they might be more conservative people. But heading into November 2020, Republicans in Arizona and elsewhere were primed to see defeat not as a result of demographic trends or political failures, but rather as the fulfillment of a prophecy. Trump had promised Americans there would be fraud, especially if he lost. At 11:20 p.m. on Election Day, when Fox News called Arizona for Biden, social media exploded with the rumor, rebutted by officials, that Trump ballots in Maricopa were rejected because voters used Sharpies, because they love Trump, who uses Sharpies, right? The frenzy manifested in real life when disinformation peddler Alex Jones and furious citizens swarmed the county's ballot processing center. "We don't know how this game is going to end," Jones bellowed, "but if they want to fight, they'd better believe they've got one." No fight ensued, by the way. Normal contingencies for verifying the results kicked into gear. Maricopa's official hand recount of 2% of ballots found no irregularity. The voting machines passed tests for logic and accuracy under bipartisan watch. On November 30th, Arizona's Republican governor endorsed the certification of Biden's win. That same day, at a Hyatt in downtown Phoenix, Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani was leading a rogue hearing, they should have put that in scare quotes, hosted by Republicans from the state legislature. Republicans who believed Arizona was a red state, no matter what the numbers indicated. Trump called into the event and said, "I know that we won Arizona." He assured the legislators that their fight was becoming legend. Giuliani told them, "I'm counting on you to find me a whole bunch of others in the legislature like you and turn them into you." And I'm melting, apparently. Anyway, I think it would be poetic justice if President Trump won 2020. Well, this is just goofiness. I think it would be poetic justice if President Trump won by 2,020 votes after a review of the ballots, said State Senator Sonny Borelli, a Republican, just because it's 2020. And sure, it would be justice because, okay, whatever, dude. He was followed by State Representative Mark Fincham, whose name we, I think, heard yesterday, who 5 weeks later would be in the area of the U.S. Capitol as the insurrection unfolded, though he would deny immediate awareness of it. I didn't know. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is a skirmish," said Fincham. That is some inspiring words. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is a skirmish." Thank you. He said this on November 30th, laying out a vision for the coming months. You ain't seen nothing yet. Because when Satan, yes, Satan, wants to extinguish a light, he will stop at nothing. So be on your guard. Put on the full armor of God, and be prepared to fight. Now, Section 3, a new revolution is upon us. Of course, so is our top of the hour break, but we'll go right into that. Shelby and Steve were prepared to fight. That's good. They had armor of God lying around. Why, we're just normal people, says Shelby Bush. We're grandparents, so you gotta believe them. She works in the medical field. So, what does that mean? You're either a doctor or a nurse or work in the medical field. Great, okay. And is district chair for the Maricopa County Republicans. Steve Robinson, or a district chair. Steve Robinson, her fiance, works in maintenance. That's easier to understand. They had distrusted elections for years. So great. Even when Trump won in 2016. So they led the charge for a full audit in Maricopa. They say they had heard about hackable software and seen video of purported ballot manipulation. Something was wrong, they thought, and recounting all the votes was a way to get to the bottom of it. On December 29th, they co-founded a political action committee called We the People Arizona Alliance, or at least just AZ Alliance, but I guess that's for Arizona, and borrowing the tritest possible phrasing, We the People Arizona Alliance, whose website promises to, quote, hold elected representatives accountable and take our country back. What a great mission. Okay. The Alliance held rallies outside the Arizona Capitol complex on December 30th and January 6th, by the way, wink wink, to support an audit and issue a, quote, warning to politicians. A new revolution is upon us, because why not? Steve told the crowd in Phoenix, not long after law enforcement had quelled the insurrection in Washington. Let's get 5 tyrants out of office. Why just 5? Of course, those would be the 5 county board of supervisors, the Maricopa County supervisors, who they hoped to recall from their positions. More after this. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show on Roots Radio. We'll continue with this craziness in Maricopa. Just I like the level of detail here, just to tell you exactly what some of the people driving this process are all about. So we left off with Shelby screaming to the assembled group, let's get 5 tyrants out of office so they can support the recall election for all 5 Maricopa County supervisors, because they said, the election actually went pretty smoothly and you just lost it. Well, get them all out. They're tyrants. Their PAC started receiving donations from individuals around the country. $100 from a plumber in Hillsboro, Wisconsin. $200 from a real estate agent in Pacific Palisades, California. $7,000 from a retired firearms dealer in Apache Junction, Arizona. At least one of them is from Arizona. And somehow the firearms dealer had $7,000 for this. In March, they got $50,000 from Lindell, the founder of My Pillow, who had recently appeared by video at one of their rallies. And, it's a nice donation, although you do wonder, I thought that guy was a billionaire from his pillow thing. Why $50,000 for this centerpiece of the right-wing circus? You'd think maybe $500,000 would have been more helpful, but I guess he didn't really believe in them either. This is evil versus good, and it's going to be amazing, Lindell said to hundreds of cheering Arizonans in Queen Creek, Arizona, on March 10th. We get through this, I believe Donald Trump will be back in office this summer. I question whether he really believes it. Sometimes I think he does. I guess what I'm questioning is, does he really believe these people can help? Because if I'm him and I'm sitting on millions of dollars and I believe that this is really, I've identified the evil versus good fight and it's going to put Donald Trump back in office, why do I stop? Why donate $50,000 and stop? It's probably because he's like, I could give them $1 million if I thought they wouldn't abscond with it and just waste it on themselves. I guess I'd give them more money. But I'll dole it out in drips and drabs because although I believe Donald Trump should be back in office, and this is the sort of activity that might put him back in office, and I really do believe that this is an evil versus good fight, I don't trust these two yahoos to do it right. You got to keep coming to me for the money and bowing and scraping before me, and I'll give it to you in drips and drabs. Maricopa County and the Republican House Speaker declined to legitimize the movement, at that point anyway, leaving the Arizona front of Trump's war to the state Senate, which subpoenaed the county for the ballots. That's interesting. So on the House side, the House Speaker says, not going to help you. But the Senate was willing to do it. It's interesting that it works that way. It's very often the reverse, at least on the national level, that the crazier crazies end up in the House with the smaller districts. But I guess in the state Senate, things work a little differently, at least in Arizona. All right, so Arizona, the state Senate goes ahead and ends up subpoenaing the county for the ballots. Around the time Trump was calling Georgia's Secretary of State, you remember all of that, the false hero, Raffensperger, asking him to find 11,780 votes. Around that same time, Maricopa's Board of Supervisors was receiving phone calls from Giuliani and others who wanted intervention in Arizona. It felt like the members of the Senate were being used by outside forces, says Supervisor Bill Gates. These outside forces reached out to us, and we were not going to engage in those conversations. We had a job to do, and we did it. Giuliani could not be reached for comment, it says. Karen Fann, Fann, the president of the Senate, had a reputation as a reasonable and level-headed leader. Fann's district consists mostly of, it's another county in Arizona, and I'm probably going to get the pronunciation wrong, and those of you in Arizona will know it instantly. But it's, shall we spell it for you? Yavapai, Yavapai. I don't know whether it's Yavapai or Yavapai County. You will have to tell me. I'll keep an eye out in case any of you from Arizona are listening. Or you can email or tweet later on if you get the podcast later on. But anyway, that's where Fan comes from. And apparently it nearly rivals Maricopa in land area, but contains roughly 1/20th of the population. So you get the idea. Considerably more rural. Between 2016 and 2020, as his margins deflated in Arizona cities and suburbs, Trump nudged up his vote share in her county, Yavapai, I don't know, by 1.4 percentage points. Fann's decision to back an audit was in service to her constituents, she told the Arizona Horizon, a local PBS program. She said she received thousands and thousands of emails in support and tried to make the process bipartisan. The Senate retained cyber ninjas for $150,000 after Fann consulted with other legislators. She later explained that a forensics firm that worked for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security would have cost $8 million. We mentioned this yesterday, right? So we're going to have a forensic audit. So whatever that means, I don't know, but I guess at the very least we ought to have a forensics firm handle the audit. How much will that cost? $8 million. Oh, well, what about you guys? Well, we'll do it. We might do cyber investigations. No one really knows. But cyber forensic, that probably means pretty much the same thing, right? We'll do it for $150,000. And, for one thing, that should be an instant indication that you shouldn't really believe that they have this capability. But for another, it creates further problems. And this article does get to that after a little while. Fann declined to comment for this article, but she told Arizona Horizon, the PBS program, that the audit, quote, is not about Trump. It's not about overturning the election or the electors or anybody else. This is her trying to pretend she's level-headed. This is about 48% of the voters in Arizona, less than half, some minority of the voters in Arizona, have no confidence in our electoral system right now, rightly or wrongly so, for whatever reason, and they deserve answers. But do they? Really? Well, we say no. Privately, FAN has described it as a no-win situation, according to State Senator Rios, quoted earlier in the article. Current and former state officials are bewildered by FAN's actions and fret about the motives and consequences of the audit. Is it a plan to find, quote, evidence to justify suppressive voter laws? What's her name? Cheney doesn't admit that that's the case. Who benefits from distrust and chaos? Who benefits indeed? Arizona, like other states, has always had that fringe element, says former Senator Flake, but I guess the only difference now is that some of them are in control. Section 4, they are writing the playbook here. The fringe, as Flake calls it, has taken center stage at the state fairgrounds. By the way, just so you know, again, so the Memorial Stadium, the Arizona Veterans Memorial Coliseum, right, that where they're doing this thing, is at the state fairgrounds. Just to bring you back to an earlier section in the article, remember when the QAnon people and the Alex Jones people were saying, oh, they're having a carnival there all of a sudden. It's a false flag operation to distract from the audit or to do something near the audit or whatever. And it's like, well, the audit guys rented the Coliseum, and the Coliseum is at the state fairgrounds. And guess what? Look what they're doing at the state fairgrounds. They're having a fair. You know, like that's okay. All right, there's the dramatic music for us. Oh no, a carnival at the fairgrounds, obviously a false flag. They're using the fairgrounds for its primary purpose. Help. All right. Anyway, so the Arizona Veterans Memorial Coliseum opened on the fairgrounds in 1965. This is important to know for some reason. With Bob Hope hosting the Ice Follies in Phoenix, Arizona. According to the Phoenix New Times, Elvis played here, as did the Phoenix Suns for about a quarter century. In recent years, the Coliseum hosted gun shows, a jiu-jitsu championship, and MC Hammer. Very important. Now it is home to, quote, the most comprehensive forensic election audit in the history of our galaxy, according to a Twitter account associated with the state Senate, putting it on a galactic level. I would say probably, yeah, I guess that's probably true. Not that anybody has read the history of our galaxy or anything like that, or that there are any other audits going on elsewhere in the galaxy, but maybe aliens are auditing their votes. The activity on the Coliseum floor has a Kafka meets Willy Wonka vibe. Can't even guess what that vibe is. Workers and volunteers in color-coded t-shirts, that feels Wonka-ish, carry out various administrative tasks, Oompa Loompa-like. Really? Ballots are withdrawn from a chain link rent-a-fence, slowly unboxed in batches of 100, and spun 2 at a time on color-coded trays, where 3 workers look for the tiny bubble filled in either for Biden or Trump as the ballots move by. Then the ballots are reboxed to await their turn on a paper forensics table where they are photographed. The images are uploaded to laptops, which experts say have not been independently tested or certified. Eventually, the ballots are carted to another chain link cage that is labeled with a pink slip of paper that says complete. When the audit paused on May 14th to clear out for high school graduations, about 20% of ballots had been tabulated. So I forget exactly when this thing started, but basically they worked for 2 weeks or something in that neighborhood and got 20% of it done. I don't know how they thought they were going to get this done on $150,000. And the answer is they never believed that, and they knew immediately that they would be supplementing that cost in some other way, and that becomes important. We got 6,000 students, them and their family members, that are going down to the Coliseum just a few yards away from our ballots and our machines, said County Supervisor Steve Gallardo during the emergency meeting earlier this week. Is that ballot security? That's one significant worry. The plan is to restart the audit Monday. I guess that was last Monday also, despite its trail of oddities and the mounting fury over its execution. While Arizonans are carrying out the physical process of the audit, semi-mysterious out-of-towners seem to be involved in its funding and execution. A website started by Patrick Byrne, the former CEO of Overstock, who claims fraud cost Trump the election, is soliciting volunteers to work at the audit while trying to raise $2.8 million to support it. Reached by text, Byrne did not answer a question about where the money was going. Byrne says he has donated $1 million personally and predicts an unspecified, quote, Titanic victory around Memorial Day. And I assume that he means it strikes an iceberg and sinks, but he probably has different ideas. But that's where the upshot of the, well, we'll bid $150,000 comes in. Well, what if $1 million is put up by the former CEO of Overstock.com, which is an amazing thing to claim as a credential, but and then trying to raise another $2.8 million to support it. So 3.8, nearly $4 million being piped in possibly by this guy. I mean, why did you bid $150,000 if that's not the cost of it? And is there no concern in the Arizona State Senate that mysterious outsiders can say, I'll tell you what, I'll underwrite the whole thing. All you got to do in exchange for my money is, when do we find out? What do they have to do in exchange for that money? Another name that's echoing around is Jovan Hutton Pulitzer, a document pattern recognition expert, whatever that means. Pulitzer once billed himself as the commander of Treasure Force, the, quote, world's foremost terrestrial treasure recovery team. I don't know where else the treasure might be other than in a terrestrial setting, but I guess we're flirting with aliens again. He is also the author of many books, maybe, including a survival guide titled How to Cut Off Your Arm and Eat Your Dog, unquote, which I assume he's going to present as necessities in one type of emergency or another. But if it's just a survival guide, like you'll be better off with one arm and won't be hungry if you eat your dog, then that's not much of a guide. Pulitzer says he developed a, quote, virtual machine and platform, unquote, whatever that might mean, that can evaluate the authenticity of ballot paper. People orbiting the audit have suggested that his technology is being used to analyze photos of the Maricopa ballots. So what is that technology? How does it work? What is the proof that it does anything other than, either nothing or spit out the answer that these are all votes for Trump? Or what? We don't know. We don't know. And we'll never find out. I can't confirm or deny it, Pulitzer said during an earnest 2-hour phone conversation that covered everything from hanging chads to conquistador spears. Okay. Why not? Everybody in these things has NDAs, he says, adding that he's a conservative, but not a stop the stealer, or a QAnon adherent, or the failed treasure hunter that Georgia's Secretary of State labeled him in December after he claimed there were vulnerabilities in Georgia's elections system. I can tell you there are issues and problems, and if these machines can't tell a real ballot from a fake ballot, we need to look at the ballots to understand what's going on, Pulitzer says, adding, my job is just to understand what happened. I don't know what happened. So there. Right. So how can we tell, how are we supposed to know if this was a real election if machines can't tell a real ballot from a fake ballot? How can you tell? I've invented a machine with a secret process I can't tell you about that can tell the difference. And weirdly, all the Trump ballots are real and all the Biden ballots aren't. But I can't tell you why because I've signed an NDA. Sure. That's a big refrain in Maricopa and around the country. Something went wrong and we don't really know what it is. And again, it comes down to, well, we thought that Maricopa was going to vote Republican and that therefore Arizona was going to vote Republican, and they didn't. That's what's wrong. Why is it wrong? We don't know. We don't know. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it, Senator Fan has said, without specifying what it is. The election was stolen, tweeted Wendy Rogers, a newly elected Republican state senator, on the day of Giuliani's event in November. We will get to the bottom of it. People must go to jail. There's lots of gaps and holes and really just misinformation, said State Senator Warren Peterson on Tuesday, adding, I'm trying to get to the bottom of some of these things. This is just a race to the bottom, according to current and former officials who say some Arizona Republicans are worried about getting Mike Penced, that is, facing political or possibly physical danger if they don't support Trump's continuing attack on democracy. The Maricopa supervisors who have been harassed outside their homes, assigned police protection, and decamped to Airbnbs to avoid threats. My colleagues across the country in Georgia and Michigan and many other states have protection details because their lives have been threatened since the election, says Kim Wyman, the Washington Secretary of State. It's frightening. Democrat Katie Hobbs, Arizona's Secretary of State, received a security detail after a deluge of threats, but she has remained in the fray. As the state's top election official, she has excoriated the fraudit all over the mainstream media, partly because she fears it will become the norm. Look, this is comical to watch, Hobbs says of Maricopa's mess. We've all laughed at it, watching it unfold, but it is very serious. This is precedent setting. They are writing the playbook here. Republican county committees around the country are making requests to do forensic audits, according to multiple state secretaries of state, and local officials nationwide are fielding bizarre offers from unqualified, quote, auditors. Byrne, the former Overstock CEO, is now backing an audit push in Pennsylvania. Earlier this month, hundreds of people showed up in a town meeting in Windham, New Hampshire, to demand an audit. They turned their backs on the Board of Selectmen and chanted, "Stop the steal." An accountant from Nashua, New Hampshire, has apparently raised $74,000 through a Christian crowdfunding site, great, in an effort to hire Jovan Pulitzer to conduct a people's audit, as he puts it, in New Hampshire. Pulitzer, by the way, says he's not an auditor and did not initiate contact with New Hampshire or its citizens. None of this is visible from the floor of the Arizona arena, but on Twitch, Telegram, and YouTube, you can see how the rabbit hole that has opened in Arizona is part of a larger warren, a series of tunnels that allow internet ravings to worm their way into the rhetoric of officials. Recently, a claim from one of Lindell's online documentaries about a systemic algorithm, whatever that's supposed to mean, used to elect Biden, ping-ponged around Twitter and into the timeline of an Arizona state senator, who then votes to create this stupid thing, right? A critical post from Ron Watkins on voting software made its way to State Representative Fincham's Gab account via a tweet from an OAN reporter. There's nothing we're doing here that you can't do in your state, a Scottsdale real estate agent named Gail said on May 7th to her 6,000 subscribers on YouTube. We contact our senators consistently and get a ground operation going. The state Senate may be orchestrating this audit to shore up the security of future elections, they claim, but people online believe it will help put Trump back in the Oval Office. The domino metaphor is repeated on message boards and social media in tweets and in videos. It's all ridiculous, but there are people that believe this, Hobbs says. We saw what happened on January 6th. I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility that something like that could happen again. Last section, I think here, section 5, good intentions, as though there were any. The audit was supposed to wrap on May 14th, but now it will end sometime in June, according to Cyber Ninjas, which is still operating under the $150,000 contract with the Senate. They're just getting sweet bags of unmarked cash from weirdo billionaires from around the country for no particular reason, and for nothing in exchange for their money, I'm sure. What will the audit really cost, though, and who's paying for it? It took about 17 days to count around a fifth of the ballots. At that pace, the counting would go through July, not June, as they now claim. Meanwhile, access to voting materials has been granted so permissively via the audit in Maricopa and through court cases in Michigan and other states that experts are nervous about the security implications. What really worries me is that so many groups are getting the kind of access to the election system that you'd need to make fraud happen in the future, says J. Alex Halderman, professor of computer science and engineering at the University of Michigan, adding, up until 2020, we were worried about very well-resourced foreign actors like Russia, but what's happening now is creating a very serious potential for a serious domestic threat in 2022 and 2024, the likes of which we've never had before. There's never been this confluence of political actors, technical actors, and access. Hypothetically speaking, if Maricopa is the front line of a slow-moving admin-surrection, this is what a perimeter breach might look like. As it stands, private companies and individuals have been granted unprecedented access to equipment, the Arizona Republic reported on Wednesday, and the county's voting systems could be unusable after the audit. Cyber Ninjas told the Post that all proper care and procedures as outlined in the terms of the contract were executed to ensure confidence with the equipment being used. But on Thursday, Hobbs said this equipment was compromised because elections officials do not know what was done to the machines while under Cyber Ninja's control. And remember, the one thing they might possibly actually know how to do is cyber manipulation. And we have no real proof that they can do that either. But they can't do audits, but they can work, or you might expect from the name that they can work with the software. What are they doing with it? We don't know. No one's watching. No one who does know is allowed to say. NDAs. More broadly, Hobbs wonders if bad actors will start infiltrating poll worker recruitment. Others worry responsible elections officials will be intimidated out of their jobs and replaced by partisan crusaders who may believe they have to kick in the doors of the sanctum to protect it. Quote unquote, I would say protect it. State Representative Fincham, the Republican who at Giuliani's hearing spoke of battling Satan, is campaigning to replace Hobbs as Secretary of State in 2022. In a recent interview with the podcast, ready for this one, Red Pill News, a source for news about QAnon and President Trump's war on the deep state, per a description on iTunes, he suggested that if fraud is found in Maricopa, the legislature could, quote, reclaim the state's presidential electors. At this point, that's the best I'm hoping for, said Fincham. Fincham, who did not respond to requests for comment, seems to really believe in what he's doing. Sincerity underpins participatory disinformation, which is the interplay between concerned citizens who rile each other up with these claims and the actors who can script them into real-world battle, explains researcher Kate Starbird, who studies online rumors and social media usage during crises. This is how you get rallies to, quote, stop the steal, affidavits that cry foul at polling places, and 7 in 10 Republicans believing that Biden did not legitimately win enough votes to win the presidency, according to a recent CNN poll. Matthew Masterson, former senior cybersecurity advisor at the Department of Homeland Security, says he talks every day to elections officials who are being swamped by this type of disinformation. This is part of their reality. Doing everything by the book and still being presented with outlandish theories and lies, Masterson said on a May 4th call coordinated by the National Task Force on Election Crises. The only people that benefit are those that are raising money off this, and more directly, Vladimir Putin in Russia, who gets to watch us undermine our own democracy. Participatory disinformation motivated the January 6th insurrection, says Starbird, an associate professor at the University of Washington. Before and after November 3rd, elites spread a message of a rigged election. Audiences engaged with this message, either tactically or sincerely, by generating false or misleading stories of voter fraud that sometimes caught the attention of elites, who then amplified those stories and created an echo chamber of collective grievance that became increasingly violent in tone. Starbird mapped a retweet network of the Stop the Steal movement, and Arizona was well represented in the run-up to January 6th. Fincham, Arizona GOP Chair Kelly Ward, and Representative Paul Gosar were major nodes of disinformation that encircled Trump's and spoke outwards to countless ordinary Americans, some of whom were ready to take action. So many people are doing it with good intentions, Starbird says. They are sincere believers trying to find evidence to support their theories, which may lead them to misinterpret events. They're searching for a greater truth and getting all this positive feedback on social media. Your celebrity influencers are actually validating you and telling you that it means something. It's such a powerful kind of political participation. Well, we're getting towards the end of this thing, and in fact, there's a whole other section. But we're going to take our break now and probably join up with Joan McCarter after this. She may be interested in hearing some of the conclusion, but we'll move on next. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning. I have good news to report. Many more listeners like you are making critical contributions that keep our show on the air. It makes good sense, of course, and patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple. Now you can make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for helping keep you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all of your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. There is more. There's considerably more. This is a very long essay, this thing about Arizona, but I think you've gotten a flavor for what's in it. I recommend taking a look at it. The last section is a little crazy too. By the way, just entitled, the subheader for that one is "You Don't Take from God," to give you some idea of what these guys think they're doing in auditing all this. You see, God was trying to give the election to Donald Trump, and you people, by counting votes, are taking from God, and you don't do that, you see. And I'm sure they'll all explain exactly how that works to you. But more importantly, I think at this point, now that you've got a flavor for these things, and you probably did even before we began reading through this, Joan McCarter is with us and brings news, well, among other things, first of all, that I guess you say Kevin McCarthy has spoken up and issued a statement about the latest Marjorie Taylor Greene craziness. Is that the context of his statement?
Mostly.
Mostly, okay.
Marjorie is wrong, he says, and her intentional decision to compare the horrors of the Holocaust with wearing masks is appalling.
Okay, well, that's something.
So then, the Holocaust, the greatest atrocity committed in history, true. The fact that this needs to be stated today is deeply troubling, also true. But then, of course, at a time when the Jewish people face increased violence and threats, anti-Semitism is on the rise in the Democrat Party and is completely ignored by Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I get the picture. Right. So it's going to be an attack on Nancy Pelosi. Marjorie's wrong, but Nancy Pelosi is like the Holocaust. Wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, yeah, it's wrong to compare things to the Holocaust unless the thing you're comparing is Nancy Pelosi, in which case you got it. She's ignoring all the problems and anti-Semitism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, not much more to be expected from McCarthy. It's good that, you know, the first part of the statement is all right, but I guess bottom line, they'll do nothing about her, and she'll continue to do this because this makes her famous, and it gives everybody an opportunity to tweet to people who are upset about it, saying, "Why are you being upset about it? You should be ignoring it." And then we ignore the admonition to ignore it and go around in circles, and she continues to do it. So,
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you know, Steve Scalise came out with one too, saying essentially the same thing.
Well, good for him.
Yeah.
Okay, so nothing happens, and
nothing happens. She's going to continue to harass AOC, follow her around, threatening her, and with her weird obsession.
Yeah, they really need to do something about that.
Continue to scare people, continue to intimidate people, continue to make the halls of Congress that much more fearful. And Republicans aren't going to do anything about it.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, that's there is really a super scary situation that they really can't do anything about that. They can't even bring themselves to do that. It's so clear that she's got a otherwise actionable obsession here with stalking several people. I mean, she's got a pattern of stalking lots of people. So I guess they could point to that. Oh, it's not just AOC. I stalk everybody. But it's particularly bad with AOC because, she knew she could ride that to fame. There's a YouTube channel full of subscribers who want nothing more than people to yell at AOC. So she does this. But, I mean, this has been years now. It's going on to its third year of this weird obsession. And she has fought with several other members of Congress, and there's just no getting the Republicans to take it seriously. I don't know. Not even a censure resolution will get support among them. So I don't know. All right. Well, I guess we have to live with it.
She's going to keep pushing the limits.
Oh, yeah.
She's going to push out till who knows what.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think she's incredibly dangerous, and I think now. Yeah, the sad part about the last couple of days is she did the Holocaust comparison a couple of days, and it made her infamous, and so she just did it again. And I assume that she'll just continue to do that, and I don't know. I guess we all just stand around and watch it happen, I suppose, until the day comes when she says, I told you that I believed you were all vampire pedophiles years ago, and that it was my responsibility to take you out. And I also told you how much I love guns. And I don't know. I guess you should have seen it coming, but you didn't. And I'm glad you didn't. And then we'll all be standing around having the how could we have missed the signs discussion.
How could we have missed the signs?
Yes.
That's sort of the theme for today.
Okay. Yeah. Let's make a theme.
How could we have missed Mitch McConnell actually saying out loud, I am 100% committed to blocking anything Joe Biden wants to do. And by the way, I have complete unity in the Republican Party from Collins to Cruz.
That's a good question. How could we have missed the 12-year history of the same thing? I don't know. Yeah, it's pretty amazing that... did we replace all of our political reporters at some point? Did they expire after 5 years and we get new people that haven't read old reporting, never, saw what happened with the Affordable Care Act and the negotiations, so-called negotiations over that? And
or we just all have extremely short, well, not all.
That can't be the case. I know we remember this.
No. And you really don't expect people in the Biden administration who were also in the Obama administration to have such short memories.
Right.
So one can only assume, and, I don't want to get into 11-dimensional chess here, but one can only assume Biden has been allowing Republicans to show all of their cards so that Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema and Tom Carper will say, oh, right, this again.
Yeah, it's a possibility. But yeah, it would be very frustrating to invest a great deal in the 11-dimensional chess thing again.
It would. That might be what we're seeing. However, Biden gave Republicans a deadline of Memorial Day to say, okay, are you going to be with us on infrastructure or should we just bag it? And it was weeks ago that McConnell gave his 100% committed speech.
Okay.
But, the White House is still playing along. And in fact, last week said, well, okay, we'll knock $500 billion off of our proposal on infrastructure. Will you talk to us now? And Republicans said, no, of course not. We won't talk to you now. So I think today we're finally at the point where everybody just said, all right, not happening. No Republicans. Okay. What are we going to do next? Maybe, hopefully we're at this point. Hopefully we don't have another White House offer shaving another several $100 billion off the bill. But it's all rather frustrating, Kagro.
Yes.
It's all rather frustrating. After the momentum of the American Rescue Plan, after all of the great stuff that was in that bill, and it was really great stuff that is going to be helping a lot of people, here we are.
Yes. And it's familiar territory. And I thought I saw you tweeting yesterday, I don't know whether it was one of your own stories or a headline from another story or just a good point you were making. You can tell me the provenance of it. Tweeting yesterday that unless there's some serious movement forward, like real soon, Biden risks just inheriting the infrastructure week joke template.
Yeah. Oh, that was me.
Yeah,
that was mine.
There you go.
I wasn't
all credit
thrilled
to you
be
then.
doing it, but
No.
yeah, we are sort of at that point, and it's Republicans sort of
I'm sure they would love
pointing
to
fingers and laughing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Clearly, there's stuff in here that's going to be helpful for them in their districts. House Republicans actually managed to cough up a plan. It wasn't a good one, but they managed to do it. Senate Republicans have obviously not been serious about doing so. They haven't really changed their original $100 billion.
Yes, that number, the one that's under $1 trillion.
I hate numbers, Kagro. I hate numbers.
I know.
Anyway, they're more than half $1 trillion plan, which was the most ever that they've ever come up with. They haven't really moved off of that, although McConnell mouthed words about, well, yeah, maybe we'd go up to $800 billion. They never actually put together anything that did that. They never actually moved away from saying we've got to have gas taxes and user fees and take this money from COVID relief. They've never said, okay, we'll talk to you on corporate taxes. They just haven't budged from where they started, which was with a vague sort of, we'll magic some money together for this and support the fossil fuel industry further by focusing on roads and bridges.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a backhanded way of supporting fossil fuel industry. I did see I thought I saw a Republican hint that maybe $1 trillion would be okay. Not that they speak for anybody else or would honor that pledge or anything, but they just float numbers and then they don't bring plans that enact those numbers.
No. There's no indication at all that actually Shelley Moore Capito has any authority for Mitch McConnell to make a deal.
Yeah, well,
she's the lead negotiator. She's the one who's been trotting up to the White House, who's been saying, well, we're negotiating in good faith, and I think that President Biden really means it. And, of course, not saying the real part is which we don't mean it.
Yeah. There's no reason to believe it. Shelley Moore Catco has come to negotiate on behalf of the...
Exactly.
Yeah, we've seen that one before.
Speaking of which, that's probably not going to pass either.
Okay. The January 6th
That being
commission.
The January 6th commission, which Mitt Romney is the only Republican who has said, yes, I will vote for this.
Okay. Well, there's one. It's bipartisan.
I haven't seen Lisa Murkowski say anything just because I'm not sure that... Yeah. A lot of times Lisa Murkowski doesn't say things. She doesn't go out of her way to say where she's at.
Right. If it comes to the floor, I'll let you know.
Susan Collins pops up on Sunday morning talk shows because, of course, she does because it's Sunday on our televisions and it's Susan Collins.
She's not busy.
Say that she's going to demand things that are already in the legislation before she'll vote for the legislation.
Aha. So it's a win-win for her.
Yeah. That, we have to get agreement that this ends at the end of this calendar year, which is already in the legislation.
Okay. All right.
And that Republicans get to hire staff, which is spelled out in the legislation.
Okay. Well, I want to guarantee that it's written on paper. I'm very concerned that it be put down on paper using words in English. Okay. I think we can accommodate you. In fact, I know we can accommodate you because it's already done. You liar. But yeah, I mean, if you go on a program in business attire and say that, nobody's going to assume that that's already in there and say, well, that's crazy. What a weird demand you have because of course. Even when they know, even when the hosts know it's already in there. Sometimes they know, sometimes they don't. But even when they do, they just say, well, I'll just ask another question. What the hell?
Yeah. Yeah. They don't push.
All right. Well, that's unusual.
So that may come up this week, the January 6th Commission. And it might be that Schumer is talking to Biden and he's saying, okay, we can show them being Joe Manchin and Tom Carper and Kirsten Sinema.
Okay. Yes.
All of the people named Kristen or Kirsten should just decide on which it's going to be.
Too many variants of that. And what is that anyway?
And agree upon a spelling because it's very confusing.
Right. Well.
Anyway, perhaps this is Schumer saying to these guys, look, January 6th, people were up here banging on our doors trying to kill us. Mm-hmm. They had a noose out there on the Capitol grounds ready to hang Mike Pence. They meant it. Mm. Maybe we should do something to see what was behind that and figure out how we can stop it in the future. Maybe. And Republicans, of course, are saying, nope, no, we're good. We're all good. Right. So maybe this is Schumer's way of saying to Joe Manchin, look, this is who you're dealing with. This is who you think you can get on your side. Yeah. Not going to happen.
And there's some indication that he's upset about these things. You just, so what? Like, I'm upset. And then what are you going to do about it? I don't know. I'm going to tell you I'm upset. That's basically it. So he's, he does say what it was over the January 6th thing, right? That he says, I can't believe that they are rejecting this bipartisan proposal. Okay. I mean, I can believe it, and you can't, and that's nice.
At the same time, Joe Manchin has had his problem with the For the People Act, that January 6th changed everything, and that there are so many people out there who don't trust the vote.
Yes.
Taking kind of the wrong lesson, I would say, from January 6th.
Pretty much the opposite. Yeah, I would think. I don't know. We never understand really what makes him do what he does, and Sinema's no easier to figure out.
She's harder to figure out. Manchin, I think, is primarily hubris. Like his conclusion, and I also wrote about this morning, that he's done a great deal of study, and he thinks that it would be unconstitutional for Congress to make D.C. a state.
Yeah. That comes out
whereas
just after
dozens
they
of actual constitutional scholars ran to leadership of Congress to say, no.
That is weird.
In fact, West Virginia was declared a state by Congress.
Yes.
After a split from Virginia.
Right. Well, all the states kind of were created this way. But
pretty much.
Does he...
Yeah.
Was his statement a reaction to the experts, or was it prior to the experts?
It was prior to the experts.
Okay. Well, at least he can lean on that.
He did a great study of it.
I did my research online. Right. I found out that COVID is a hoax online, and also while I was there, something, DC. I mean, I guess there's I don't know whether he was relying on it or not, but somewhere in there you could bury, there are certain parts of D.C. that would still have to be carved out as a federal enclave that would cause a constitutional problem if you didn't, so they carve it out. But, people just take that and say, oh, well, I don't know. Somebody said something about it was unconstitutional. I didn't really read why, but it sounded good to me. That way I don't have to do it.
Yes.
And that's
but
it.
He's convinced himself.
Okay.
I mean, at least we're at the point where Manchin is having to give justifications for what he's doing.
Yeah. that's nice. Make him work for the money.
But
He might accidentally find something
his
out.
justifications keep being wrong.
Yeah. Well, that is weird. Yeah, I don't know exactly what it is, but neither does he. So it makes it impossible to discuss it with him. Like, why do you think it's unconstitutional? I heard it was. Okay. Would you like to read this? About how it's not? I don't know. No word yet whether he'll read it or absorb it or understand it. Maybe a staffer will read it.
Maybe somebody can break through his thick skull to let him know that he can be the hero here by saving democracy.
Yeah, even with just one of these things would be a good step forward to figure out, and of course in general to come to the conclusion, okay, I have seen this before. They're not serious about negotiating with us. We won't be able to bring any of them on board, even on the best offer we've got, a bipartisan commission on studying the people that came here to try to kill us the other day, and that many of you
trying to figure out how we can stop them from doing that again.
Yes, rather than inviting them again. And I don't know. I'm not certain what it takes to convince him. I had a good time. That is to say, I infuriated myself watching the video from, who did I watch yesterday? Mike Gallagher. His January 6th video surfaced when, I don't know if you saw this one, he's speaking to his laptop. I'm locked in my office because there's a protest outside where they've broken in and they smashed the windows, and this is crazy, and it's a banana republic crap, and only the president can stop it. Mr. President, you have to step in and stop it. And then 10 days later, impeach the president? No. It wasn't his fault. I videotaped myself saying it was his fault, but now the point is that you never saw that videotape. And I vote no on impeachment. Oh, you did see the videotape? I am embarrassed. Goodbye. Have a nice day.
I doubt he's embarrassed.
Well, even if he was, it wouldn't make a difference. But yeah, these are the things that I can't believe that Joe Manchin refuses to absorb. But okay. What can I tell you? He's just not gonna get it for us. He's gonna have to come to this conclusion. I guess that's the thing, is to find how can he change his mind in a way that saves face. And that's the big experiment. And that's the only hope of the 11-dimensional chess theory, that they're just trying to show him nothing will happen and nothing will work. And none of the things that you have that are actually good ideas in that head somewhere are some great things like, let's build out a 21st century our infrastructure program, and I keep thinking, why am I thinking about this? Interconnectivity, internet connections for rural broadband, etc. All the things that make real sense for West Virginia or anywhere, for that matter.
Or anywhere, the whole country.
That's a real thing and a real good idea, and could be a great legacy for Joe Manchin. And everyone will, I guess, one day forget what an idiot he seemed to be, because he built this fantastic thing. And did you know that West Virginia, all of a sudden, job growth, blah, 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 people are connecting. And, if we can't get there with infrastructure, roads, trucks, bridges, doesn't matter. We can at least connect them and stay connected via the internet. Fantastic. But gee whiz, I'll only do it if a member of the other party that doesn't want any of these things to happen and doesn't want any Democrat, even Joe Manchin, to get credit for it, says it's okay. You want to bet your legacy on that, I guess. Go ahead.
Apparently, and to the detriment of everything, pretty much. Yeah. Democracy functioning. The next election being free and fair.
Yeah.
But it's just that so much is at stake right now is making it all so much more fraught. And in the meantime, it's just business as usual with Republicans on the Hill, with McConnell drawing this out, creating, as usual, the crises, the calendar crises of we're bumping up against government shutdowns the debt ceiling, all of
Right.
these things that are going to happen in September, because of course we have to have Memorial Day recess, and then we have
Sure.
to have August recess,
Yes.
and he's spooling out the negotiations for as long as he possibly can, knowing that we're going to go on recess and we're going to have to come back and we're going to have to rush things together. We're going to have this fight over increasing the debt limit. We're going to have fight over the budget, because that's how he does it, because
Yeah.
that's how he's always done it. And
We've seen it.
Democrats keep allowing him to. And that is really, really frustrating.
Yeah. And another parallel to the Affordable Care Act fight, I keep seeing that members are now, actually, you mentioned the recesses, they're worried about going home during the recess, about what awaits them. Will people be confronting them? We'll be having angry, or, organized angry mobs at town hall meetings, the way we did with the Affordable Care Act. Like, you see
Of course
that you're
there will
worried
be.
about this.
We don't know that it's going to work quite as well, because everybody's going to be getting their checks.
Okay. Well, hopefully.
But if people don't understand that those checks are coming from Democrats and from President Biden,
Yeah.
it might not help.
Yeah, that
so
would
far
be
you
a
don't
task.
really understand that, it's coming from the Democrats and from President Biden.
We only have more opportunity now that all the Republican governors are doing everything they can to cut off additional federal unemployment benefits. Maybe we
Right.
can make them realize where the checks that aren't coming were coming from. Perhaps that is an opportunity, but we'll see. I don't know. It's amazing, though, that they... and I guess lots of Democrats are seeing the parallel. And I don't know. Was Joe Manchin not with us through... I guess he probably wasn't with us through the Affordable Care Act fight. He must have come in right after.
No, we had Ben Nelson in those days.
Yeah.
Who actually wasn't Cornhusker kickback. He actually wasn't as bad as Manchin is now. I mean, I would take Ben Nelson again.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, it makes me worry. It makes me feel like, hey, George W. Bush, hey, he was terrible, but not as terrible as Trump. But don't forget how terrible he was. Please don't. But, yeah. Manchin just, I guess, sets the new standard. Yeah, I guess he's been in since 2010.
He wasn't there for the whole fight. He came in 2011.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe that has something to do with it. Like, we're all saying we saw this before, and he says, I didn't. But if he would say so, that would be something. And we would say, let me show you a videotape of what happened. Something. All right. So I guess we're stuck with trying to deal with him. But hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully there's some dent being made. It feels like he's at least feeling pressure every once in a while to say, I am very upset about what's happening with the January 6th commission. So that's a thing. Not that he will say, I will help you pass it, or I will help you break the impasse. He continues to refuse to do. And I guess, I don't know, the thing on DC statehood is just another signal of, well, I guess we have to give an opportunity to absorb the lesson of the experts, illustrating why it's okay, even though you once heard something vague about it being unconstitutional. And we'll see. But I don't know when that promises to break through, if it does at all.
I don't know that it does.
No.
It's getting kind of dire. So if you're in West Virginia, give your senator a call. He needs to hear from you.
I guess so. And when you call
Give
him...
both of them a call.
Right. Why not?
Tell Capito that, hey, lady,
Yeah.
we need this stuff.
Right. I checked with my neighbor who's a Republican, and he said I should call Senator Manchin. So that's bipartisan. We both agree. And if it's not really true, don't worry about it. It's okay. Go ahead and tell him. All right. Well, I mean...
I'm sorry to bring my frustrations to you on this Tuesday, but I'm frustrated.
Hey, it's important that we all know that we share the frustrations. That's what we do. But we have to check in every once in a while on exactly which things are causing the most frustration, and the balance changes from week to week. That's the dynamic. I understand it.
It's true.
Yeah.
Hey, at least we don't have Trump anymore. At least there's that.
Right, that's true, and nothing could be better than to have seen him go into blogging, which is fantastic. Let him enjoy the frustration.
Which is another platform, although he hates that word,
yes,
for him to raise money.
Right. Well, and I understand it's just not working all that well for him, so maybe he too is a frustrated blogger.
And he's got a big balloon payment coming on one of his properties.
Ah, yeah, we've heard about that for ages, and I guess that's now coming. Although I always heard about it in the Kushner context. We'll have to find out more about that, and maybe it's something we can discuss next week. I appreciate your coming by despite the frustrations.
All right.
Take care. Next week. All right, looking forward to it. Time now for us to wrap things up and hand it all over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy.
From networksradio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right, let's see what's up. Maybe I'll skip down a little bit here. What do we have internationally this week? The EU says its tensions with the UK stem from Brexit, not the Northern Ireland Protocol. Okay, and Taiwan's bid to take part in the World Health Organization's annual assembly has failed. Still denying that reality. Oh well.